again, fellow Earthlings. My name is Ginger Ferrer. I'm a community advocate. And there is a call-in number that you can call in if you're out of the state of New Hampshire. It's area code 603-413-0223 if you have a question or if you have an issue that you'd like for it to be heard, because this is what I do. I address issues that fall on deaf ears, and I keep talking about it until hopefully some remedy is produced to resolve that problem. Because Glenn Ouellette asked me to share with the viewing public St. Patrick's Day videos that tapings that he made of St. Patrick music. I'm giving him almost a little over a quarter of an hour of my show today. So this is going to be a two-part segment regarding housing code compliance and the fact that there are certain individuals that appear to have absolute carte blanche to get away with continued housing code violations of housing codes, even though in the last 15 years, 2 people have died on their property. The seemingly never-ending question as to why since 1978, when lead paint was outlawed in this country, there are still so many properties with lead paint in and on them. 37 years later, there are still lead paint violations active and contributing to the death or disability of children, toddler-aged and older. How can this continue to be allowed? The same building that caused Sunday Abeg's life, that caused her life, is the same building that cost Diane Croto her life. Not from lead paint contamination, but a leaky gas condition in that building uninvestigated for many weeks. The fire department was called and immediately evacuated. Diane Croto experienced a heart attack and passed away due to the stresses she experienced during this unsafe and frightening time at 102 Bridge Street. So I felt compelled, even though this has already passed, the building is still there. The owner is still the same owner that took over that property. And in the first incident where Sunday Abet died, her name was never brought up at all. And I'll tell you why. I printed out a file from the New Hampshire Real Estate Commission, order file number 2002-01-01. It indicates that James T. Enickstein of JTA Real Estate Brokerage and Property Management was overseeing the responsibilities of the property at 102 Bridge Street. In the court papers, it only identifies the owner or management representative, Mr. Enickstein, as a fiduciary real estate agent for the client landlord. No mention was made of the fact that Juliet Maltano was a property owner. She purchased 102 Bridge Street on May 31st, 2001 from Mr. Giovanni Graziano. Mr. Graziano had purchased this property in 1989. So who were the inspectors of this transaction process during the exchange or purchase of this property? Were repairs required to bring it up to code? Were they enforced if needed? One has to wonder why Juliet and Maltano's name was not on the file order as already described herein during the legal processes of this life-taking matter in which a less than fully 3-year-old child died as a consequence of not only lead paint contamination, but the fraudulent signatures her agent provided on the paperwork attesting to her family's knowledge of lead paint at 102 Bridge Street. Why was her name not included? Why was she not held accountable? Did Mr. Enickstein, figuratively speaking, fall on his sword for Juliet and Maltano? As of this date, March 25th, which was yesterday and the date that I prepared this paperwork, 2015, 102 Bridge Street does not have a certificate of code compliance. It expired in January of 2015. It is now March 25th, 2015, and who is a department head who appears to not have enforced this need for a current and updated certificate of code compliance from the building and inspection departments of City Hall. According to the rule listed on the website of the City Hall's Housing Code ordinances, if one is a landlord in the city of Manchester, New Hampshire, they are required that all residential rental property within the city have a certificate of code compliance with the regulations set forth in Chapter 150 Housing Code. Owners of properties bought or sold with an expired certificate may be subject to penalties. There can be no excuse for a property owner who does not keep up with whomever she or he hires to manage their rental properties. And in this second case, I don't believe there was a property management entity involved in the gas leak. So now that a second death has been attributed to the perceived negligence of fair and safe housing code conditions or lack thereof, where is the accountability in this crime? It would appear that this lady has a great reputation in Antrim, New Hampshire, but those citizens do not live in her properties in the city of Manchester, New Hampshire. And as history has proven repeatedly, there are humans on this planet from all walks of life who consider other human beings collateral to be traded for whatever they need to get away with or seek. Low wages, slum housing, poor constitutional practices, victimization on a grand scale, seemingly sanctioned by the authorities who are supposed to enforce the rule of law across the board, but do not and have not. So what is the next tragedy to happen to the rights of the tenants at 102 Bridge Street, Manchester, New Hampshire? How many more lives will be sacrificed by the lack of compliance by all agencies who are supposed to oversee and execute these concerns? I spoke with the Housing Code Department regarding the gas leak that occurred at 102 Bridge Street in the recent past, and she said it is the responsibility of the fire department to address these potential concerns. I asked her why, when these lives are in danger, that they don't advise anyone and everyone who needs to know, despite the fact that it may be the fire department's responsibility. She restated it was up to the fire department to take care of these concerns. Pass the buck time. Safety does not appear to be of any real concern. The fire department cannot know what is happening if somebody doesn't call. And if tenants do not know, especially immigrants or refugees, do not know that they're supposed to call the fire department in case of that kind of an emergency, then they're breathing in these toxic fumes from a gas leak. The fiduciary definition, I looked it up, and it says that when a real estate agent or broker is acting in an agency capacity for a buyer or seller client in a transaction, they have certain legally mandated duties that are called fiduciary duties. The position of the agent or broker is a fiduciary capacity acting in the best interest of the client. So why did Mr. Annickstein overstep his boundaries? Was he prompted by the owner herself? Why would somebody take that kind of risk unless there was some kind of pre-knowledge of what he was going to do? One of the reasons that I was prompted to look this up and speak to it again is because of remarks that were made by Rich Girard on his program about his concern about new subsidized housing being built in this community. This is I've mailed a copy of this letter to Mr. Girard. So this is an open letter to Mr. Girard. Has it ever occurred to you as to why the people you label as poor come to Manchester, New Hampshire? There are federal and state-approved programs which actually invite people from all manner of tribes to live in Manchester, New Hampshire, American immigrant and refugee. Why? Well, for one of the many perceived reasons is because of the cheap labor practices and even cheaper housing non-compliant living conditions. Add to this their inability to as yet understand the rights they are entitled to regarding all constitutionally related matters if they are immigrant or refugee or just an inexperienced American. Have you ever accompanied a so-called building inspector on his rounds of alleged inspection practices? Have you ever followed up on the slum landlords of and in Manchester, New Hampshire? Doctors, lawyers, rental agencies, and churches who operate in and outside of Manchester, New Hampshire. They're rental property agencies who disallow repair and code compliance on the poor, as you have labeled them. But they are human beings trying to make a life in a city whose only purpose appears to be to keep less than code-compliant housing filled with those who cannot afford to pay full price and qualify for subsidized housing or are disabled and elderly. How do you think these agencies make their money? Well, they have to appear to be doing a good thing by placing the poor and disabled in federally subsidized housing if they qualify. Their paychecks are at risk. If the money stops flowing from the federal government, who subsidizes their housing programs and provides their salaries at the same time, they are out of business. No more victims to use and abuse. Ask yourself this question, Mr. Girard. How did these agencies qualify for a license to operate for what all intents and purposes was to operate a charitable housing program for those in need, but have failed to do so year after year and decade after decade? Who do you suppose permits these violations? You must be very proud of your perceived mindset of myopic viewpoints regarding all of the contributing factors of some of your cronies who walk the halls of City Hall and other businesses who commit on a daily basis the rankest kind of disregard for the rules of law regarding safe housing and fair wages. The rundown, falling down condition of some buildings abandoned or worse. Quick profit for land developers who come in to scoop up these properties for pennies on the dollar. Isn't that the way these concerns have been exercised since recorded time? Take, for instance, Mr. Anagnos and Mayor Gatzis, who appear to be joined at the wallet when it comes to being compliant with the needs of a handicapped entrance on a city-owned property managed by an Anagnos agency at 1045 Elm Street. You appear to be a very myopic, self-centered type of human being. You appear to be unable to see the full picture, all of the contributing factors and the circumstances you speak to on your programs, fueling the fire of further ignorance and prejudices, because you appear to be unable to see all that is going on right under your nose by those with whom you interact with on a daily basis in your comings and goings. The consistent perceived so-whatisms practiced by your fellow abusers of people's rights and dignities, spindled and mutilated every single day. Human beings being used as collateral to continue to rent non-code compliant living conditions, working for less than minimum wage or being disrespected and mistreated because you and they appear to think and act as if they are not entitled to any kind of dignity or remotely constitutional treatment. Their rights appear to have no bearing on what is imposed on them every single day by those you interact with daily, having their children die of lead paint outlawed in this country and state since 1978. Broken steps, no lighting in hallways and porches, decks so weak they cave in from the weight of an emergency medical caregiver as they try to bring down those rutted steps, a life in jeopardy due to a medical emergency. Do you know how long it takes for these conditions to take place? How many inspections come and go and these needed repairs remain unresolved? Yet the landlord or property owner continues to receive their housing permit. Can you even begin to think on a fairer level of perception than the one you appear to generate with your callous remarks? You are putting the blame on the wrong side of these matters. They were brought here, invited. So who is to blame for these circumstances as you referenced regarding more housing for even more tenants of disability, the elderly, or the newest members of this community provided by the very agencies and churches who sponsor them here in the first place? Or is that too difficult a concept for you to consider? What kind of a human being are you, Mr. Girard, and more importantly, what kind of an American? There are some contact sources that I wanted to share with anybody who might have a pencil and paper handy. This is what they promote on their websites at the www.manchester.gov/departments/planning and commission development enforcement. Now, this is what is supposed to happen, okay? The Housing Court Ordinance was established to ensure that all residential rental properties in the City of Manchester meet or exceed minimum standards. Details on this ordinance can be obtained by clicking on the link above. One item of particular importance is the need for hard-wired smoke detectors. As of January 2000, all smoke detectors in residential rental properties are required to be powered by the house current wired in accordance with the electrical code. The zoning ordinance is designed and adopted for the following purposes: to protect and promote the public safety, convenience, comfort, aesthetics, prosperity, health, and general welfare of the inhabitants of the City of Manchester, New Hampshire; to secure safety from fires, panic, explosion, noxious fumes, and other such hazards and dangers, and to control nuisance-producing uses of land. Now here, this is part B. It says noxious fumes. So the city is supposed to oversee those concerns. But the city did not go to 102 Bridge Street to look into the noxious fumes, which was a gas leak that was affecting and being exposed to all of the tenants in that building. And if it wasn't for Glenn Ouellette, who called the fire department, only God knows what might have happened worse than what already happened when one of those tenants died as a consequence of being exposed to that and the stress of having to evacuate her life from that building. And so again, I ask the City of Manchester, when was the last time that that building was thoroughly inspected and whatever needed code compliances were enforced and made to be complied with? And why is this lady still in March without a certificate of code compliance for that property? To promote adequate light, air, privacy, and convenience of access to property. To avoid undue concentration of population, to prevent the overcrowding of land, and to lessen congestion in the streets. To facilitate the adequate provision of transportation, solid waste facilities, water, sewage, schools, park, child daycare, and other public requirements. To assure the proper use of natural resources, to prevent pollution of air and water. To protect property from flooding and accelerated erosion. To protect historic and archaeological resources, to protect wetlands, and to conserve natural beauty and open space. To conserve property values by preventing the harmful encroachment of incompatible uses and by providing for the elimination of those uses which adversely affect the neighborhood character, development, and value of property, and to ensure that any proposed development is compatible in use, scale, and building design within the neighborhood in which the development is proposed. To encourage the most appropriate use of land and to allow for planned, orderly, and beneficial growth as envisioned by the master plan. Now, I can tell you from personal experience where it says here the harmful encroachment, the elimination of pollution, of erosion, accelerated erosion. I lived in an apartment on Beach Street in the 90s. And I've told this story many times, and I keep repeating it in the hope that it will help save somebody else's life. The furnace in that building, in that apartment, in the basement, had not been tuned up in 10 years. But I was at the beginning of my disability and totally so over-medicated that I couldn't think clearly. It never occurred to me that all this fine dust that was all over my apartment was being spewed out by a furnace that was spewing out indoor air pollution and aggravating an already existing work-related bronchial asthma condition. It landed me in the hospital for almost 6 days. And it was with the blessing of a donated computer that I began advocating for myself and then for other people. And I became a producer to share information because the more I looked for remedy, the harder it became. I witnessed the inspectors that came to that property, and you would think that my landlord and they were joined at the hip. He walked so close to them that he almost bumped into this guy. There were not hardwired smoke alarms in the building. The furnace had not been maintained or tuned up in 10 years. The porch was ready to collapse. And in fact, one day when he was out there, it dropped a few inches. So what did he do? He got a couple of honest, hardworking repairmen to come and look at it, and he asked them what they were going to do. You know, what would they do? What would it take to repair this porch? So after they left, he put a Band-Aid on a big open wound of a needed repair. The front porch of that apartment was so decayed that when the federal inspectors came from Manchester Housing, they remarked and they told him and they wrote it down on the paperwork of the report that porch had to be repaired. It had to be fixed because it was so sunken down in the middle that you could see the ground. So what happened? A car comes along and crashes right into the front porch of that building. He got away with all the costs. The insurance company paid for the repairs, and he took his time about getting it done. So I speak from experience. I speak from the fact that it almost cost me my life in order to realize what was going on and how many other people's lives have been lost as a consequence. And I realized that laws were being broken in the city of Manchester regarding the rights of tenants, the disabled, veterans, children's, all incorporated in the expected constitutional expectation of due process, of compliance. So when Mr. Girard and all those people that appear to think like him, that what's considered poor people are some of the most honest, hardworking people that contribute to their communities, who have to live under these extreme circumstances, why they don't, in their minds, or it appears in their minds, that they don't deserve code compliance, that they don't deserve safe housing, that they don't deserve to receive the rule of law that is supposed to apply for everyone and to everyone. I have a video of a Tina Turner song, and I'll explain it to you after you've heard it. Why I I put it on my program.
Out of the ruins, out from the wreckage, can't make the same mistake this time. We are the children, the last generation. We are the ones they left behind. And I wonder when we are ever gonna change. Living under the fear till nothing else remains. We don't need another hero. We don't need to know the way home. All we want is life beyond the Thunderdome. Looking for something we can rely on. There's got to be something better out there. Love and compassion. That day is coming. All else are castles built in the air. And I wonder when we are ever gonna change. Living under the fear till nothing else remains. All the children say we don't need another hero. We don't need to know the way home. All we want is life beyond the Thunderdome. So what do we do in our lives? We leave only a mark. Will our story shine like a light? Or is it the dark? Is it all or nothing? We don't need another hero. We don't need to know the way home. All we want is life beyond Thunderdome. All the children say we don't need another hero. We don't need another hero. We don't need to know the way home. All we want is life beyond Thunderdome.
Hello, you're on the air. Hello, you're on the air. Hello, you're on the air. Hello. Brendan, I don't have it.
Yep, they must be gone.
Okay. Thank you. The words of that song, in place of the thunderdrome, of the thunderdrome, is the Constitution. Where is our Constitution in all of these neglected processes of all of these rights that are supposed to be for everyone? Even a refugee or an immigrant, if they're living on American soil and if they're receiving help from federal agencies, they're entitled to what those federal agencies guarantee, which is federal law, which is constitutional law. And just because you dress well and you make a lot of money doesn't make you a good human being or a valuable human being, no more than a person who works 9 to 5 for minimum wage. It's how they conduct themselves. That's the yardstick. That is the yardstick. And the fact that there's appeared to be so much of that kind of mentality in places where it shouldn't exist or be allowed to exist. You can think all you like, but you can't take it to work and impose it on other people. And yet, that is exactly what happens every single measure of time, every single day. There's always somebody who's being bullied or verbally talked down to, or they abuse their position in the workplace, or as a landlord, or as a business person, or as a politician, or as a police officer. There are very good police officers, but there are also those who dishonor the uniform and the badge. And so some of the politicians and their cronies that permeate City Hall, or appear to permeate City Hall, they have many citizens in this community hostage, devoid of proper constitutional procedures at the local, state, and federal level. There are people fighting tooth and nail to bring out the truth of what really is going on at City Hall, and it appears to be upsetting some of those mindsets there. The public has a right to know. And the thing that really seems to be a very myopic perception on their part is either they don't know what's going on or they don't care. As long as it's not happening to them, as long as they're benefiting from it. Okay, we're going to try this again. Hello, you're on the air. Hello, you're on the air.
Hello, Ginger.
Hi.
This is Bob.
Hi, Bob.
Mr. B.
Yes, Mr. B, how are you?
Oh, I'm fine. I wanted to make a comment about something,
Okay.
about housing inspectors.
Mm-hmm.
A while back, I was watching the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, and Mayor Gatsas came up and he had a big smile on his face. He said, we've got an extra $69,000 in surplus. So then Alderman Levasseur raised his hand and he said, what can I do for you? So Alderman Levasseur said, why don't we get another housing inspector, seeing we only have one? Oh, so Mayor says to him, I'm going to put that in a slush fund. What do you think of that?
Well, that's the typical response. This slush fund, if there's only one inspector for all these buildings in the city of Manchester, then you know why the buildings are so run down and why there's no code compliance. There's not enough personnel.
That's correct. Years ago, when I was growing up in Manchester, if others lived here, you could see the firemen on the street. They'd have a truck parked in front of a building, and there would be three of them, and one had a clipboard, and they'd go into the building, and they would inspect these buildings.
Mm-hmm.
And if they didn't comply, if there was something that needed to be fixed or replaced, they would give them like 7 days, and they gave them an order to do it with paperwork.
Mm-hmm.
And then they said, we'll be back in 7 days to see if the work has been done or not. this was back in the 1970s and 1960s.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like that today.
Oh, it hasn't been like that for a very long time. I've lived here 28 years, and out of those 28 years, 25 of them have been under non-code compliance.
When I was a teenager, I can remember very well, but the government wasn't like it is today. The government today just doesn't care. It's all matters of money. That's all they think about. And I believe that back in the days when I was a teenager, the government was better off.
Well, yeah, there was corruption, but it wasn't as pervasive as it is now.
Yes, I believe that.
Yeah. So how
Well, I
you,
thought I'd give you a call.
Bob? How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing okay.
Okay. So stay in touch, okay? And thanks for the support, because I appreciate it.
You're welcome, Ginger.
And thanks for calling
Bye-bye.
in. Bye-bye. If there's really only one city inspector for all of the buildings in Manchester, then there's something dreadfully wrong. And this $69,000 that Bob spoke of, what is a slush fund? How do you identify that in the sense of dispersing monies for needed programs in the city of Manchester? And why is it, I've asked this question many times, why is it that when monies is received or a grant is received for a certain specific need, that money is taken out of that fund and put into the general fund, and the need never gets repaid or repaired? So where does the money go? Who gets it? And why was it put there in the first place? I've got a video that I have to share with you. It's about 17 minutes, which is going to put me at just about closing this segment of a two-part segment, because I will continue to readdress these circumstances with further information for people who may be able to use this information to contact sources either at the EPA or at the state capitol, because they're not getting any satisfaction from the officials that should be overseeing their concerns in the city of Manchester. So Glenn Ouellette has prepared some St. Patrick Day entertainment, and so here it goes.
Welcome everybody to the Irish party. Grab your drink and the person nearest to you and let's have a good time, eh? Hup, hup, hup. It's an Irish party, we ain't going home. Wanna kick me up, we'll pull my home. We'll drink a few and we'll be on our back. Now everyone in here stand up and clap. It's an Irish party, we ain't going home. Wanna kick me up, we'll pull my home. We'll drink a few and we'll be on our back. Now everyone in here stand up and clap. Ishkabaha, that's Irish for whiskey with plenty inside you. You'll be a bit frisky, a lump of a lady could look like a model, but getting on top could be more than a doddle. You're up in the morning and get a great fright. You're out the house and you're up on your bike. A bit of a player, two girls on your arm. They're loving your accent and loving your charm. As far as they know, Colin Farrell's my cousin. You feckin' done it, so you can't be judging. Funny thing that the Irish say, be grand. But this is the way, cause this is the country where green is the colour. Drink too much whiskey, you'll beat up your brother. It's grand the next day, so you fall into bed. So sit your let's have a good time and keep those feet moving along with the rhyme. I got you all moving from Dublin to Cork. Everyone's clapping from Clare to New York. Keep your glass up and let's have a good time and keep those feet moving along with the rhyme on the Emerald Isle. It's an Irish party, we ain't going home. Wanna kick me up? Well, poke my home. We'll drink a few and we'll be on our back. Now everyone in here stand up and clap. It's an Irish party, we ain't going home. Wanna kick me up? Well, poke my home. We'll drink a few and we'll be on our back. Now everyone in here stand up and clap. It's an Irish party, we ain't going home. Wanna kick me up? Well, poke my home. We'll drink a few and we'll be on our back. Now everyone in here stand up and clap.
Well, the Lord saw some sinning, and it gave him great pain. And he said, stand back, I'm going to make it rain. He called the brother Noah, said, Noah, here's what to do. Oh, build me a floating type zoo and get two green alligators, two long-necked geese, two humpty-back camels, and two chimpanzees, two rats, two cats, two elephants, but sure as you're born. Now, Noah, don't forget my unicorn. Now, Noah was there to answer the call, and he finished up the ark just as the rain was starting to fall. He gathered up those animals two by two, and he called out, hopefully went to through. Hey, Lord, I got your green alligators, your long-necked geese, your humpty-back camels, and your chimpanzees. I got two rats, two cats, elephants, but Lord, so forlorn, I just can't find those unicorn. Now Noah looked out through the driving rain, saw the unicorns hiding and playing silly games. They would not come to the ark for the rain, it was falling. Oh, those silly unicorn. Now there were green alligators and long-necked geese, some humpty-back camels and some chimpanzees. There were rats, cats, and elephants, but sure as you're born, well, things weren't looking good for those unicorn. Now Noah closed up the ark and it floated on the tide. The unicorns looked up from the rocks and they cried. Help. Then the waters rose up and carried them away. And that's why you'll not see a unicorn to this very day. But you'll see a green alligators and long-necked geese, some humpty-back camels and some chimpanzees. You'll see rats, cats, and elephants, but sure as you're born, you're never gonna see, a unicorn. What are we gonna see? You're not gonna see no unicorns to be found. An ill-fated one. 6, so we set sail from the fair cove of Cork. We were bound far away with a cargo of bricks for the fine city hall of New York. She was a wonder of a craft, she was rigged fore and aft, and oh how the wild winds to rover. She had 23 masts and with stood several last, and we called her the Irish Rover. Well, there was Barney McGee from the banks of the Lee, and there was Hogan from County Tyrone, and a chap named McGurk. He was scared stiff of work, and a man from Westmeath called Malone. Here was Slugger O'Toole, he was drunk as a rule, fighting Bill Casey from Dover. There was Dooley from Clare, he was strong as a bear, and the skipper of the Irish Rover. Now we had 1,000,000 sides of old bloody horses' hides, and we had 2,000,000 barrels of stones. We had 3,000,000 bales of old Billy Goat's tails. We had 4,000,000 packets of bones. We had 5,000,000 logs. We had 6,000,000 hogs. 7,000,000 barrels of porter. We had 8,000,000 bags of the finest Sligo rags in the hold of the Irish Rover. Now we had sailed 7 years when the measles broke out and the ship lost its way in the fog. Then the whole of the crew was reduced down to 2. 'Twas myself and the captain's old dog. Then the ship struck a rock with a terrible shock, and then she heeled right over. She turned 9 times around, then the poor old dog was drowned. So I'm the last of the Irish Rover. She was a wonder of a craft, she was rigged fore and aft, and oh how the wild winds to rover. She had her Atlantic mast and withstood several blasts, and we called her the Irish Rover.
What's up? Patrick's Day? Yeah, happy St. Patrick's Day.
That was awesome. The bagpipes. There's something about bagpipes that's almost like a haunting. It's almost like a beautiful yearning sound to be released from within the bagpipe. It's just so beautiful. I only have a few minutes left, but this is, like I said, part one of a part two segment regarding the many violated rights on many levels of many citizens in this community. And I know it's going on all over the country, but I cannot attest to that firsthand. I can attest to it here because I live it, and I've met people, and I've filmed people, and I've reported about people who are trapped in these circumstances. But I wanted to close with a reminder of a website. This is a bracelet that one can order from www.herobracelets.org. And there are military heroes alive and who have died serving their country, that one can request a bracelet, and they have different types of bracelets. This one, a specialist, Joel L. Bertoldi of Independence, Missouri, Army 7-1803. That's when he gave his life for his country. And I think we need to remember the price of freedom that cost so many families, their sons and daughters, in every part of our community, of our American community and its territories, and the allies that fought alongside, whose sons and daughters paid the ultimate price for fighting for freedom in their part of the world. So please remember, ladies and gentlemen, that our precious freedoms are not free. They've been bought and paid for by the sons and daughters of this country and the allies, the sons and daughters of our allies across the world. So long until next time.